I first want to, I see Caprice is there. Welcome, Caprice. Um, and welcome to each of us who've taken time for this, which I consider a vital opportunity to be present to each other and listen and share and take in, maybe take in more than give out. So welcome to this pilot speaker series. We are all related. This is how our time together will go this afternoon. I will begin with a centering time. After this, Luann, Susie, and I thought it would be important to share with you how this series came about. So I will give a brief explanation of that. Then Susie will introduce Caprice, our speaker for today. Following this introduction, Caprice will share his reflections on our directional statement number 2. In accepting our invitation, he stated that he looked forward to forming community through conversation. That really touched my heart, Caprice. His sharing will be followed by a question and answer period, which will be facilitated by Susie. First off, I want to let you know that Luann regrets that she will not be present due to a ministry obligation. So let's begin. Let's take a couple of deep breaths in and out. Now I invite you to just take a few minutes of reflection for yourself on the title of this series. We are all related. What emerges for you as you reflect on those words? We are all related. We'll take a brief time of reflection. Gently holding what you receive during this time of reflection, let me share with you how this series of speakers came to be. There will be 3 pilot series, one today, one in May, and then a panel at our assembly. It is a pilot series, but we've already been asked to consider maybe doing this quarterly after we finish these first 3. So how did it come to be? Colleen McGinnity's Zoom conference to talk about the directional statement number 2 came with high hopes for action. During the discussion, I suggested how wonderful it would be to have others reflect on this statement with us and share their insights. Susie offered to work with me in brainstorming what this series might look like. Luann heard about our idea and asked to join us in the planning. So here we are today with very, very, very strong hearts, because the speakers who we are asking are very generously taking time to reflect on our statement and then share with us, their insights. We are so grateful. Susie will now introduce our speaker for today, followed by a question and answer period. Again, I thank each of you for taking time to listen. Susie?
Thank you all for joining us today. Like Pat said, it's so exciting to be able to be doing this, that the work of creating unity this way is a passion that drew me to the BVM congregation. And it's the congregation actually that introduced me to Caprice, because fairly soon after I started working and at the BVM Center, Kathy Carr came to my office and said, Susie, did you know associates can write letters of recommendation for grant applicants? And I said, no. And she said, well, go investigate this place called the Fountain of Youth. Get to know the founder, Caprice Jones, and write a grant, because we need to support them. And so that was why I got to meet Caprice a number of years ago. And it has been a wonderful opportunity to get to know him, to see the work that he's been doing, but also among the work that he's been doing through the Fountain of Youth and through the work that he's done in partnership with the NAACP here in town, and with other agencies and organizations and people, is really beginning to create a great opportunity for dialogue on what does it mean to be together in a space. And so when Pat and I had this idea of creating this speaker series, he was the first person I wanted to invite. And so I've asked him to come. And so Caprice, it's your turn now to talk.
Thank you for having me. I like to I like to share with you all. I like the direction so far as we are all related, because that's what my where my heart is at right now in this time in history, to really exemplify what that means, as opposed to just saying it. And I'm understanding that you got to go deeper to really understand a lot of these things that's taking place with our lives and our existence. And so I want to take you all, like, I'm give you a little my past, where I come from, like literally, and then we'll go into the past of the country, and then we'll go into the present of the country, the present of my life, and the future of the country, and the future of my life. So I'll take you all back to when I was in prison in 2006. I got the original copy that I wrote. It's a poem that I wrote, and it was called Product of My Environment. And at this particular time, I still had 2 more prison sentences to go through that I had not even known about. But yet this is what was coming out of me, because at that particular time I was working on change. And I was facing all the different the obstacles that was external and internal. But the biggest obstacles I was facing at that time was really what was internal, what was inside of me. I never seen nothing but rough hustling, broken wine bottles, and empty crack bags in a land that's supposed to be milk and honey. No role models to mimic like them cats on TV. Stick Up Man is my future reality, because that's all I ever see. Handcuffs, baby mamas crying fake tears because she has the slightest idea of what true love means, and let alone what a positive attitude towards change could achieve. Slave to the game is engraved in the hearts of the hood's men and women, young and old, pushing packs, packing gats, roach-infested apartments with big fat rats snatching down garbage bags in the kitchen at nights, when and where 3-year-old kids gotta walk past to reach the bathroom. Yeah, that's common to see where I come from. I guess it's safe to say that I am a product of my environment. I wrote that back in 2006, and that was during the time when I had no clue of what my life or my purpose was supposed to be. From the tender age of, I'll say around maybe 6 years old in Chicago on the South Side, in one of the worst ghettos in America, I was thrust into a reality, which was that my family was poor. And I had not known that it was a part of generational poverty. I had known nothing about anything. I didn't even know about, like, why was I even here? Why was I born? Like, how did this happen? And that was a question that I stumbled on for quite some time. And a lot of times I found myself, once I began to try to face some sort of identity, I took on all the things that I found pleasure in inside of me. And those things did not manifest until I was exposed to certain things. See, I didn't know that I was going to be attracted to certain things until I was exposed to it. I didn't even know I was going to be born. I didn't even know what being a human meant. And so everything that I acquired and I taste as my experiences came from my upbringing and my environment. And at the time, I thought that I was basically doomed, because by the age of 16 years old, a few of my friends, they got killed execution style for frivolous reasons, like trying to sell drugs, or somebody didn't like them. They got into it with somebody. And to me, that was common occurrences that was taking place during that time in Chicago, that I thought, hey, I might as well keep doing what I'm doing because I'll be dead before I turn 18. And unbeknownst, at 21 years old, I thought about, wow, you made it to 21. But I was in prison from 1997 to 2002 for the first time. And during that particular time, I had no clue about, like, manhood. I said I was a man at 12 years old, so at that particular time, I really kind of like, I shut down from the natural process of maturity. And I had to fend for myself because I wanted to prove that I was a grown man, because I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I wanted to escape what human nature brings upon a person, which is primal fears. And I didn't know none of these things. I wanted to escape the truth, which was that I was human, and there was some questions that weren't going to be able to be answered on the surface. I had to wait for that time, if I was given that opportunity, to go a little deeper. And so I'd like to take you all to, so this particular conversation over this next hour is going to be different and unique, because this is a young man that has turned into an older man. Because if I said I was grown at 12, and I really wasn't, I put myself through a lot of experiences at a young age, a very young age, and I did a lot. I did it all. I experienced every situation of life, from being from a impoverished life, from a destitute life. So I can relate to a lot of different people that's in this world. And I never understood why I had to go through that, and I didn't want to accept that, because I wanted life to be like perfect for me. It was all about me. I had not known about primal fear, the fear of abandonment, the fear of loss of identity, the fear of loss of meaning, the fear of loss of purpose, the fear of death, sickness. I ain't know none of those things. But I had to experience all those things, and I still continuously learning. I'm learning to accept these as being a part of life, and not allowing fears to dictate my present or my future. And that was a process that I had to go through. And I equate that to the grace of God. It was an act of God's grace that brought me here, that changed my mindset. And so the year 2016, I had an epiphany. I was out. I got out 2013 for the last time. And my mindset was changed. Everything about me had changed. But it was just the beginning stages because I had not arrived. But I was not where I used to be. And I understood full well at that point that my life was going to be full of sacrifices and full of pain because I had to let everything go. And the things that I didn't know what was holding me back. And I used to carry that weight on my shoulders of ignorance. And I equated to, well, if I went to the root of it, I was stuck on stupid. And when I accepted that, then I realized the truth was, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, was that I didn't have to stay stuck on stupid. Because if I knew that I was stuck on stupid, that means that I had the mental faculties to be able to change that. I had a power inside of me to be able to make a different choice and not do the things that I'm doing that is stupid. So I had to learn. And as 2016 came about, I had to learn a little bit more. And I learned how to let go and trust the process of my purpose. So I had an epiphany. I had a vision one morning and the Fountain of Youth came to my mind. And it wasn't even named the Fountain of Youth. The bare bones of it came to my mind, which was non-profit organizations are very vital in this hour in history, but they must begin to pour into each other. I had no clue about anything about what that meant at all. I worked at St. Luke's United Methodist Church as the janitor, the head custodian, the only custodian. And I thought that would be my career as just a person that's working there and being led to work there to be able to help somebody, whoever it may be. And then this vision came to me, and I have not looked back since then. But it's matured me in life. It's matured me through understanding humanity and understanding how to let go in order to grow. And so I'd like to take you all into the past of America in a lot of things, because I saw in a directional statement which was inequality, and I wanted to speak from that angle. So inequality, I believe that it's a disparity and it's an error in mankind to perpetuate that type of carrying on with another person, because like you all said, we are related. We are related. And that's the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. But that's a hard pill to swallow if you've been distracted by your own personal gains, by your own inhibitions, by your own self-denials, by your own self-hatred. Hurt people hurt people. And when it all boils down, a human, when you're hurting somebody else, you're hurting yourself. Because what you're doing is cutting off an opportunity to relate to that person or grow with that person being able to help you, because as a human, I'm realizing that we all need help. And so let's go back to the very beginning of America, right? When everything basically kind of started. So we say, we the people, in order to form a more perfect union. And also it says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Now that's something to just say, but it's defined though. Everything is defined, just like everybody's life is defined. But most human beings, if we stay stuck on the surface, we won't be able to see the bigger picture. It ain't about us. It's not just about us. It's not about us. It's about everybody that's connected to us, because we all are related. But it's a learning process to really identify with the key word that everybody is seeking: true love. It's a cost to that. So the preamble to the Constitution, to the Declaration of Independence. And the word amble, it means consideration to go at a slow pace. So the men that spoke this, Thomas Jefferson, his ideal was to be considered at a slow pace. Because Thomas Jefferson, he owned slaves. He didn't understand a lot of things that was coming up out of him. But there was something inside of him that had a desire for something better that he couldn't even understand. And that would be a process of time. It would be a process of different individuals having to surrender to the truth. And what happened over time was humans have been affected by other humans because everybody needs somebody. We can't escape that. We could deny that and then we suffer even more. And so the word amble also go a little deeper, and it goes into to wander. W-A-N-D-E-R. And that means to move about aimlessly and also to err. So mankind, from our primitive beginnings, have been making a lot of mistakes from a lack of knowledge. Sometimes we could be blinded by what's right in front of us, ourselves. So it took me to understand something a little bit more. So when we talk about to accept, to hold these truths, meaning to grasp this truth, it has to be self-evident. To be self-evident. So a person had to be able to identify with themselves first and know their shortcomings, to be able to identify with, if this is going on with me and I'm a human and I've been born into this world I've never been in before, everybody else probably going through the same things. But that's a vulnerable moment. And there are some things that takes place that humans have to overcome. The obstacles that they don't understand is a process of time. And one of them I discovered was the id, the ID, the id, instinctual desires. That's the first thing for survival. Humans is trying to understand how to survive for themselves and everything that's a part of them. And it's a process of letting that go. And there's a lot of pain and a lot of hurt that's going to take place until that actually happens for each individual. Because when I read my poem to you all, I was an individual that thought my purpose in this world was what was dictated to me around my environment. I thought I was supposed to be a drug dealer. I thought I was supposed to be a stick-up man. I robbed a lot of people growing up in that environment. There was no standard to say that that was actually really wrong unless whoever I robbed felt that pain. So there was nobody to hold me accountable to those actions because that's all I ever saw. And that's what I was attracted to. But I would never become a successful armed robber. My reward was punishment. My reward, I did 2 10-year sentences in Illinois Department of Corrections. In all, that was over, it's 4 years and 7 months was the first time. The next time was 4 years and 6 months. And if you in Illinois get 3 convictions of armed robbery, they changed the law for a person to really wake up. And I believe it was meant for me to wake up, but not just me as others. But I woke up because of, like, man, if you don't change, you're going to go out and keep doing the same stuff. You're going to get a life sentence. And you hate jail. But me saying that didn't prove anything. Because a person to say, I love jail, by them seeing out their eyesight me going. They didn't understand the empathetic process. Because a lot of people was too busy thinking about themselves. They want to see other beyond things, but they distracted. And that causes me to be empathetic. It causes me to be able to do unto others as I would want done unto me. Because I value life. In the beginning, I never valued life. So when we talk about, we hold these truths to be self-evident. Self-evident is, that's vulnerable. Every human being that's been born in this world is vulnerable. But because of our ego and super ego, we can make ourselves believe all type of things to make us feel good, to make us try to escape the inevitables, which is pain. Because the truth is, we was born naked with nothing. And the truth and the whole truth and none but the truth, we're going to leave naked with nothing. We can't take none of these things with us. But what do we leave behind for somebody else? It's what matters the most. And so that's a process. The naked part opens you up to being destitute. You got to learn to accept that. If you accept that for yourself, then you can be able to see clearly that somebody else is going through the same things probably. They destitute. No one, it's always somebody smarter than somebody else. And that was one of the things I had to let go, was my own intellect. While I was in prison, I had to let that go. Because I said, man, your best thinking has been your worst thinking. So that means I was endowed with a certain amount of knowledge that I thought this was supreme until I was humbled. Because I would find myself in situations where I'm like, I can't be that smart, but yet I'm thinking I'm smart. There's always somebody that I would talk to in the jails that would say that they would have did it better than me. So another thing means that vulnerable leads you to defenseless. So we try to hold on to the things that we believe help us survive, and we build up, we live off of a false sense of security. I talk to the guys in the jail at Dubuque County Jail every week, and I start talking to them about, you believe that if you're defending yourself, you fighting somebody, that you think that, like, if you continue to want to fight all your life, at a certain point, something can happen where you can't even fight like you thought you used to could. And I say a person will learn through humility, being humble, they may get knocked out. And they realize, man, I never knew I had a glass jaw. How did I miss that punch gonna hit me in my jaw this time? Life, we have to learn things. And that's why I believe when y'all made the statement of we are related, we got to be able to see past each other's faults and seek each other's needs. That's a hard pill to swallow, because if a person is still stuck on themselves, they got a lot to learn, because they got a lot to let go of. And that's a process. It don't happen overnight. And so if you're defenseless, you open to moral attack. And moral attack means that you don't want to face that. But it's going to happen. Somebody's going to give you some criticism. Somebody's going to tell you something you don't want to hear. And so what we do is try to fight and run against that, because inside of us also is fight or flight for survival. But at a certain point, we got to come to an acceptance. It was said through the pandemic. We all in this together. But is that just a saying, or can you relate to that? But see, you got to accept that you got to be vulnerable to be able to accept that truth. Because then it becomes real in your life. And these are the things that I've had to grasp, and I continue to grasp every day. Because each day is going to be something different. All day, it's going to be something different. But I'm aware of that now. And because of the way that I was created, I was born poor for a reason. Because my purpose in this world is to help people that's going to be born poor. They don't even understand why. They don't even understand. Like, they don't see no beauty in that. Only thing they see is what somebody is doing to them. They're not seeing what they can become for somebody else. And we just spoke about in jail to the guys I was talking to about the primal fear of the loss of a person of fear losing a purpose, the loss of purpose. So if I thought that all those years that I was doing what I was doing was my purpose, I was holding on to that for dear life. Because what type of life would I have outside of that? What type of life could I have if I'm not surviving? If that's all I know to do? My mind was never even open to the thought process of understanding what living really meant. So now if I hear someone else is sick, like I was sick in that area, we can't punish somebody that's sick. We got to help somebody that's sick. But that becomes difficult because that's going to require time. And humans only think about their time. But what if it's your time to die to thinking about yourself? I had to face that moment. I faced that moment more than once. I faced that moment every day. But I had some intense moments, though. I faced that moment when I just had COVID-19 like a couple months ago. Out of nowhere. I was fully vaccinated. And I sat on my couch to the 10th day when they say you're supposed to be getting off. The 10th day you get off. I was doing pretty good the first few days. And then the truth came. Because one of those other losses is the loss of, one of the fear, one of the primitive fears is the fear of sickness. So death, sickness, abandonment. And I was sitting there on the couch and I was like, man, I got 3 kids, my wife, I'm separated from them because I got to isolate, but I'm dying. I was literally dying. I couldn't breathe. That sounds familiar. I couldn't breathe. And the thing is, I thought about, what if I get to a point where I can't breathe? And at this time, it's a few months ago, a couple months ago, I can't remember exactly. If you go to the hospital, the only thing on my mind, they're going to put you on the ventilator. And they're going to cut your throat open. And you may not make it out of there. Like most people don't make it out. And here I sit on my couch at a crossroad. And I had a conversation with my dad. Well, I tried because I couldn't even talk because I was shortness of breath. And I said, if I wake up tomorrow and I can't really breathe, I got to go to the hospital. And so that morning I woke up, it was worse. Called my dad. He said, man, how you feeling today, son? I said, Dad, I got to go to the hospital. And he looked at me and said, all right, son, go ahead. That was like, it wasn't a walk of shame. That was like the walk of death. Because I didn't know I was coming back. Then I couldn't breathe all the way to the hospital. But I had to accept that. And I had to make an acceptance of understanding that this is something that's unescapable. And I got to still do my best as being a person that represents doing the right thing. Because also in those communities that I grew up in, how we looking on time, Susie? Okay. In those communities that I grew up in, right was wrong and wrong was right. Right was wrong and wrong was right because it was based off of a lack of knowledge. It was based off survival. When a person is in survival mode, the only thing they're thinking about is themselves, and that's it. And inside that, you want some pleasure. Because that's also a part of the id, which is the pleasure principles. You're looking for pleasure. And so a person can be misjudged because you can judge a person outwardly and not understand what's really taking place beneath the surface in them as a human. But the first person that you can look at is yourself and see what you got inside of you, what you struggle with that nobody may know about. But there are some people out here that do know about it. There are some people out here that's willing to put it all out there. to grab your hand and say it's gonna be okay. I've been there. I know what it's like. I asked myself if I didn't die from COVID, like, because Colin Powell, he was a black man. He was a man that was privileged. But he died. So nobody exempt from it. So I'm like, so that means that anybody can die from this. Don't matter if you got money or not. Any human can die from it. The same way that any human could die from anything that humans are vulnerable to. Humans could die from other humans not believing in them and encouraging them and inspiring them and motivating them. Humans could die from selfishness to themselves. I had to redefine what self-love really meant too. When we talk about being related, there's some things you got to go deeper with. That's what I'm learning. And you got to let go of the things that used to be okay to think. Now, it don't mean it was wrong to think that. It don't mean that it wasn't right. It was a depiction of something. And that was something that got you by during that time, and it probably wasn't even wrong. Well, it couldn't have been. If it was right, it wasn't wrong. But you can go deeper. So self-love, to me, is something that it still got to go a little deeper, because I'm still putting myself in the equation. It's a hard pill to swallow. Why not just live according to selflessness? Selflessness. But understanding what it really means is not you not caring about yourself. It's you thinking about somebody else more than yourself. But properly. Not enabling, but helping. Not hurting, but helping. And I think that these things can only be reached, though. It's got to be inside of you. Something inside of you got to be able to be your moral compass, to be able to make it be real to you. Because there's a lot of different belief systems. But I truly believe that a person reap what they sow. So if you sow according to doing what's truly right, you're gonna reap the reward of somebody's gonna be blessed from it. And somebody else may begin to start doing it as well. And that's what the Founding Youth motto is. It's pouring into somebody else what was poured into you, so that they can pour into somebody else. It's one person at a time. So a person to say, poverty or inequality, none of those things are in. It's a long bout. It's gonna end one person at a time. And each person matters. One person represents billions of people. I don't know where I'm at on time, so I don't want to go over.
Okay. Well, I think that, thank you for sharing your heart with us and your thoughts. And it's time now to open it up so that if people have questions, you can either put them in the chat, and the chat will come to us to be able to read the questions. Otherwise, if you raise your hands and use the little button you've all been taught how to use to raise your hands, we'll go ahead and take questions, verbal questions as well. So does anybody have something that they would like to ask of Caprice, or something that they would like to say in response to what they've said? I've got it set now where you can unmute yourself if you've got a question to share or a comment. Marilyn Wilson, will you start us off?
Hi. Hi, Caprice. This is a very simple question, but I love your first name. Could you just say about what that name means to you and perhaps where you got it? And just secondly, a comment that was very helpful because with all that's going on and the suffering of our world, that one person at a time and that it takes time and that we all just have to keep working at our own vulnerability. So that was very helpful. Thank you. But your name.
Thank you, Marilyn. I I did a lot of research on my name while I was in prison because for many years I never used my name. I used different identities. I didn't know who I was, and I ran from my name because when I was a little kid, I was hurt from somebody. They called me a girl. You know, like they said, "Oh, it's a girl name," and I didn't understand how to respond to that. And so what I did was I ran for shelter. You know, mentally. And I started coming up with different identities, different alias names and nicknames and things that would make me fit in. And so when I did discover what my name really meant, I looked it up in a dictionary and then I had prayed to God about it. And I said, God, you got to give me strength to be able to understand why my mother named me this. And he showed me it means sudden change. Sudden change. That's what it means. So it's just like, capricious is whimsical, is sudden change. I used to say things when I was like living a criminal mindset. Be like, oh, I'm gonna do this to the day I die. That changed suddenly.
Kathy?
Yeah, my question you didn't get enough. I think you had a lot more to say, Caprice, didn't you? I'll bet. Time cut you off, so you never really got you were doing with the Fountain of Youth, and so could you tell us just briefly how you got involved in that and what's your day-to-day schedule like? Like it's one person at a time, I understand, but what do you do with that one person? How do you do it?
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's things has picked up a lot. So over these 6 years that we've been in existence, we've gained a lot of people, and it's by word of mouth. Majority of the people is all about word of mouth, and our mission is to change the mindsets that contributes to generational poverty, and we emphasize the S on mindsets based off of not just individuals that grew up in generational poverty. We want to help them change their mindsets, but individuals that's never been in generational poverty. We want to help them change their mindsets because we don't want them to continue to create the traps that people have been trapping themselves in or that they've been getting trapped in. So, people be born with trappings, and these trappings be adornment, like ornaments, right? So it's things that you're attracted to, just automatically. It's inside of you, but yet it's you bring it out of you. So it's like you running around with all these things on you. So a person may be born with addictions. They don't know it's in them until something outside of them draw it up out of them, because those addictions may came from people in their past life and that's been passed on to them, that trait. And so you born with these things, and you got to learn how to face them and deal with them and let them go. And so the Fountain of Youth, that's what we do. We encourage, we inspire, and we motivate individuals to love unconditionally. And that means if you're going to love somebody else, you got to be loving yourself. You got to value your life. And so what I talk to them about is valuing their purpose. Because, they do have a life in their existence that's probably just not who they're supposed to be. But once they discover their purpose, it's going to take them beyond their mere existence. And so we meet with individuals, males, females, young, old, 18 and above. Our oldest participant right now is 65 years old, I believe, or 64. And age don't mean nothing because we're not just humans. We're human beings. You got a soul and a spirit beneath the surface that has to be nurtured and tended to, or else you stay sick. And so this when I'm talking how I talk, like how I talk with them, and so this is how I talk to them. And each day I got a program associate. He's a person that works with me, and we go into the jails. We meet with I believe like 10 people for groups called Real Talk over in the jail every Friday and Saturday. And throughout the week, we meet with people at Hillcrest. We're helping them out with workforce development. You know, the people that be considered not even employable. We're going to pull it up out of them, their fullest potential. We give them opportunity, and the employers is willing to give them opportunity as well. And we meet with people here at our office with a program called Partners in Change. And that's the one-on-one approach. And basically, they learning how to create healthy habits with their life. And they face a goal for 60 days. I've stayed into the integrity of a habit is formed within 21 days. So I say in 60 days, you definitely should have a habit. You should definitely have some tools in your tool belt. And so we do that every day. And we be busting at the seams sometimes. And, you know, I wear many hats. So it's only 4 of us. But at any given day, I may be in the middle of a big meeting and a participant call, and I have to learn how to navigate through, meeting that need of that participant and being able to meet the need of the community to keep strengthening the program so we can keep it going. And we also have a program called Community and Change too. Community and Change is something that one of the city council people asked me to create about diversity, equity, and inclusion, to educate like city leaders and just anybody in Dubuque. This was like the week after George Floyd, and this person said, Caprice, we don't know nothing about white privilege. Like, I don't look at none of that stuff. I was like, yeah, it exists, but it's not nothing to me. And she was like, well, could you create? I gave the name. I gave it up. So I tried to like Laura Roussel. Me and Laura Roussel had a conversation about white privilege and all those things, and she encouraged me to create some type of program to be able to educate Dubuque on it. And we've been doing that a lot. And so I've educated the leaderships of the city council. I mean, not city council, the city of Dubuque department leaders, as well as the city of the county of Dubuque department leaders as well, in different organizations throughout the community, in different businesses, Crescent Community Healthcare, Hillcrest staff, ECIA staff, and I just continuously do it. And now I'm on the second tier of educating the city leaders on the second level tier of the city of Dubuque, and I'm gonna be starting at this month. That's amazing.
I'm going to stop you there, Caprice, just from the standpoint that I know that we plan on asking, there'll be another opportunity to talk specifically about Fountain of Youth, to give more details. And so I don't want to miss the fact that Mary and Mary Frances have raised their hands too. So Mary Moss, do you want to ask your question? Sorry to stop you, Caprice, but I want people to tune back in the next time you get invited to talk.
Okay. All right.
Caprice, first of all, I'd like to thank you so much for saying yes to Susie and to presenting with us. One of the things you spoke about is being able to relate to the poor, because you indeed have been poor. And so I'd like to ask, what are some ways that we can relate to people whose background is different from ours?
Be open to them. Just be open. Be open to them and consider humility as a strength in that moment, because it's gonna take a lot of that. Because it's gonna be things that's gonna challenge you on the inside. It's a lot of biases and all type of things. Just as a human, things different. Like I grew up in the hood in Chicago, and I had to think about how the hood that I grew up in, I never thought about whites as being superior to me, because I never saw whites. And the police was black, everybody was, and if I went to jail, the blacks ran the jails. So to me, like the inner takings of the jails, the units, the community that we was actually in, And the whites that would come on those units, they felt inferior until I began to start digging deep inside myself and questioning myself about how I looked at people. And so I would encourage you to just be open to them and be vulnerable, but not vulnerable in the sense of and not using wisdom, but because wisdom is the principal thing. I hope
Thank
that
you.
answers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mary Frances? You need to unmute, Mary Fran.
Thank you. Caprice, your talk with us today was just very profound. And I just want to thank you so much for being courageous enough to take us on. I was never a good philosophy student, but I think you'd get an A+ if you ever majored in philosophy. And one of the things, as you were speaking of your past, I live in Chicago. I'm a native Chicagoan, and we are having such turmoil here with violence and especially gangs. And so much that you talked about, I believe, is kind of the core of the philosophy of gangs, you know, doing things really thoughtlessly, as you kind of did as you were growing up. That was the only way you could hang on to something. And so, you know, we had this terrible, and we still have it. There's a lot of hijacking of cars in the city. And as the police started to try to, law enforcement started to move in on it, they found that it was being done by people who couldn't even have driver's licenses. They were 12 and 13-year-old youths. So I don't know if you were ever involved in anything like that, but when you think of the rootlessness, you know, I think that many of us who are listening to this had a very rooted childhood, which helped us get to grow. And how do you begin? You've been very open to the spirit as your life has gone on, and you've changed tremendously. Your story is just profound. So I just thank you kind of for that. I thank you for that today, for sharing that with us.
Thank you. I think so one of the things that I do recognize is that I was a part of that problem in Chicago too. I was. And that was just normal life. We didn't value life. We didn't value existence. And so I believe that there are individuals like me everywhere. It's just that somebody had to be able to inspire them, and somebody got to love them unconditionally and
Right.
properly. And so I used to, I was a kid now. That's how I first started learning how to drive a car. I stole a car. And I've carjacked people. All type of different things. That was just normal. That's not normal. That's not normal. And I had to uproot, and I had a decent upbringing as far as like with my grandparents. I lived with my grandmother and my father, mother, and her mother, and they didn't believe in the stuff that I actually was living out. But they couldn't stop it. But they did still show me love. They weren't in agreement with it, but they showed me love unconditionally the best way they knew how. Because they grew up also with survival mode. Like they grew up in the South. And they only knew how to survive. So they taught us survival tactics as far as like, but doing the right thing. So like me, if I'm going out selling drugs or something, my grandma's and I'll be like, yeah, you can go sell drugs. They'll be like, don't do that. But I still have to learn the hard way. And they'll be there to pick me up when I fail. And so.
But I was part of that problem too. I lived in Chicago. And I didn't live in your neighborhood. And why was that? Because of redlining. You know, Chicago is one of the most segregated cities in the country. And if we could learn to live together and people could have decent housing all over the city, I think things would change tremendously.
I totally agree. And I think you could be a part of the solutions though today.
Well,
You
I'm
know,
trying,
yeah.
but
You
I
know,
need help. I need help from people like you to remind me. So thank you very much.
thank you, Sister Mary.
Thank you. Pat, do you have anything that you want to say before we close out today?
I just want to take a moment to be hearted with Caprice. Caprice, I heard you. I really heard you. And I'm so grateful that you took time, and not only time with us, but that you have developed something with the city of Dubuque. I'm a strong advocate for things that I hear from others like yourself. But I also hit the wall like you do with institutional racism, not only in government, but in religious Catholic institutions. So I will ponder what you shared and hold it very sacred. And I might get back to you. I'm going to drop might. I'm going to get back to you because you can help me a lot. So Native people who I journey with say Medakawesan, which means we are all related. It's wonderful to meet you, Caprice. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I would like to extend my thanks to all of you for coming and listening today and asking questions. And Caprice, again, thank you for saying yes and responding with the work that you do in this city and for the people in a wider community beyond where you need to have to reach, but where your heart calls you to. And I'm really grateful for that. And as we wind up today, is there anything else that you'd like to say before we close?
I would just like to say thank you all for taking the time to listen and to ask me questions. And always remember, it ain't over till it's over.
That is so true. And I found this prayer for healing for our troubled world. And I thought, given the injustice that we talked about today, and given the Ukraine and given the people that we know who are hurting in our own lives, that I'd like to end with this prayer today. And it's, dear God, our world is hurting and broken. We pray for those who have lost loved ones this week. Please comfort them in their grief and loss. Cover them with your peace and presence as only your Spirit can do. We know that in whatever we face, you are our peace and refuge, our very present help in the times of trouble. Thank you that you remind us throughout your word, we do not face the storms alone, but you are always with us, whispering calm, speaking peace, bringing rest to our souls. Amen. And again, thank you all. Have a great rest of the day and a good week and blessed week.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susie.
Thanks, Caprice.
Thank you, Caprice.
Susie. Thank you, Caprice.
Bye.
Goodbye, everybody.